Just before I went on the Family Ties audition, I went on an audition for Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. It was a show that they were doing, and I went. And I auditioned. It was a horrible audition. It was just terrible. It just stunk. I brought my guitar, and I played terribly. And I thought, man, this is what it's come down to. I'm getting rejected for Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. You know, it's just all hell. You know, it's just, you know, I'm 19 and I'm washed up, and I don't know what the hell I'm gonna do. And then like I said, my agent set me up on Family Ties, which is an NBC series with Gary Goldberg producing, and I knew Gary had just done a show called Last Resort the previous season with Taylor Negron and some other people. And I still had this like little hint of snobism where I said, I don't really know if I want to do a sitcom. My agent's like, what, are you kidding me? You know, you need a job. So I went in and I read from it, and I was the first person that they met. I went in and Gary was there, and Lloyd Garver and Judith Weiner, the casting director. And I went in and read, and they had, previous to that, made an offer to Matthew Broderick, who had turned it down. And so I went in and read, and I felt like it went really good. And I heard later that Lloyd Garver, actually, when I left, having been the first person who read, Lloyd Garver turned to the assembled group and said, well, I like him. It's good, you know. But Gary didn't like me, didn't want to see me again. But I knew that there was something there, so I kept calling Judith Weiner, and I kept saying, get me back in again. And she said, no, I'd like to get you a call back, but Gary doesn't want to see you. I just knew that was my part. I just knew it was my part. I knew I got it. I understood it. I knew how to make it. I thought I knew how to make it funny. I was basically just playing my brother, you know, who was the smart ass in our family and was so much smarter than everybody else. And my brother, you know, I never understood the idea of timing, but I knew that my brother was so funny that you'd wait for what he had to say. So what I later understood to be timing back then was just my brother was so funny at the dinner table that you'd wait for what he had to say. He'd put his glass of milk down, and from the minute he took the glass away from his mouth, you were waiting for what he had to say. So later on, that all became part of Alex. So I just knew that as I was auditioning, I knew that I just got it. There was just a sense that I had that was it. But he didn't want to see me. Now a month goes on, and during this month, I mean, I can't explain to you I was figuring out ways to cook cardboard, you know. I was eating plain wrap, everything. This is the time when you get generic stuff from the supermarket. It'd say like peas on it, you know, pasta. So, so now finally she says, well, Gary will see you. But, you know, he thinks that this is all wrong. He wants you to come in and play it differently. And I was like, yeah, great. So I went in and I read, and that second time, and I could tell right away he was laughing. And now he's seen like 30, 40, 50 actors. So his view is a little bit different. And he's laughing, and I know I'm scoring. And now I'm learning this thing that I didn't really know, because I hadn't done that much of this level of sitcom. Feeding on the laugh and playing on the expectation that he has. And the more he laughs, the more I know what he likes, and I hit that harder the next time. And I finished the reading, and he sits back and he turns to Judith Weiner and he goes, well, I should say that previous, when Judith kept saying, see Michael Fox again, he kept saying, look, I don't like the guy. I don't want to see him. He said, I'm a grown man. I know what I like. I know what I don't like. I don't like this kid. I don't want to see him. So then finally I went in and I read the second time, and after really doing a good job, he sat back and he said, why didn't anybody tell me? And that was it, and he was my champion from then on. And we went to network, because that was the thing you have to do, where you have to go and read in front of all the executives. So Brandon Tartikoff was there, and he was like the new guy. And I knew that I had to impress Brandon Tartikoff, so who didn't like me either. And so I started to read, and then he said, Brandon Tartikoff said, well, what are some of the things you've done? Give us some of your credits. So I thought, well, I'll tell him the NBC credits. So I'm thinking about NBC, so I said, well, I've done Here's Boomer. I did the pilot for Teachers Only with Lynn Redgrave. I did the Lewis and Clark with Gabe Kaplan. And Gary's at the back, and he goes, get to the hits, Fox, get to the hits. And so everyone started laughing. And then Meredith Baxter Birney came in, at that time, Meredith Baxter Birney, to read with me. And I'm thinking, oh, God, she's so young, and she's so beautiful, and she's not going to want to work with some 19-year-old kid as her son. I mean, she was barely 35 at the time. But she liked me, and they got me through it, so the next thing I knew, I was shooting the pilot. Family Ties was a show that was based on really on Gary Goldberg's life. I mean, Gary was a schoolboy athlete, and then kind of as he got older and got into college, was kind of the nascent hippie movement. So he grew his hair long, grew a beard, had a dog named Ubu, traveled around Europe, met this woman Diana, and they lived kind of a hippie existence. Very counterculture, very cool guy. And then one day he decided to write a television script he wrote a Newhart script, and he, just out of the blue, just said, I want to do this. And he sent it away to somebody who said, wow, you're very talented. Within a couple of years, he was part of the whole MTM machine, and then so that by the time our show came along, it was maybe his second or third solo producing effort. But he wanted to do a show that was based on the premise that his generation were now the parents of kind of older, young teenagers, older, kind of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. And so he had this idea of what if they had conservative values and the parents had, those kind of 60s counterculture values. So it was, believe it or not, it was a really fresh idea at that time. By the spring of 1982, I had no money. I was ducking the landlord. I was selling my sectional couch section by section. I had no phone. All I had was a big, gigantic tax bill and a desire to get a job. But I couldn't just get a job. I was really in a position where I needed like a gigantic score. I needed something really major to pull me out of this abyss that I was in. And I got an audition for Family Ties. Well, first, going back about Meredith, when I first started doing the show, I didn't have a car, obviously, and I was on her way to work, and so she would pick me up and drive me to work, and I had this roommate that I had taken in, this Englishman. He was a very funny guy. He was like a punk rock musician from London, and he'd always crack up. He'd wake up early in the morning to see me go to work because he loved to look out the window and down at this amazing blonde woman who picked me up in a Mercedes with the sunroof open, playing Vivaldi, every morning. I'd say, like, America, it's great, hang in there, man, this is the country. So, we had this great relationship. She was very sweet to me. So when this started to happen, I'm sure with her and Michael that there was some misgivings about it and some confusion about it. But to their credit, they never made me feel uncomfortable about it. I know anecdotally that they were concerned sometimes that, not so much that there was a shift to the other character, but that in that shift, that the very real needs of their characters were not neglected, and that those characters didn't become kind of stooges or set-up people, which I think, both to their credit and to Gary's, they never did. They were always fantastic characters, and Elise was a great character. Michael Gross was the actor who played my father, Stephen Keaton, and he was, I think, Princeton trained. He'd just, I think, been nominated or won a Tony for Bent. So he came to the table with some credits, and so the combination of he and Meredith, these are substantial actors. So, it would be silly and naive for me to say, oh no, they were fine with it. I'm absolutely sure that they had conflict with it and some problems with that turn of events. On the other hand, the audience was laughing, you can't deny that, and again, like I said, they were careful to make sure their characters were maintained and treated respectfully. And I think the other thing, too, that they've said to me since is, I was just so damn happy to be there. And, I didn't, say, like, okay, move my credit to the top of the show or pay me more money or anything. I was just like, wow, you mean we don't have to pay for lunch? We get to just give us that, I was just so happy to be there that I think that disarmed them to a certain extent. And to the very end of the show, it was never, that wasn't important to me to be the star of that particular show. It was, I loved the job, and I'll always be grateful to Gary for, providing a home for me. And so I think that those tensions, or the possibilities of those tensions, were really, kind of overwhelmed by just, I think, a genuine warmth that everyone had for each other, and a real thrill at what we were able to accomplish. Well, the way that came about was, I could go back to in the middle of, I guess, that '84 season, whatever that was when Cosby came on. Now all of a sudden we get big numbers, and Meredith is pregnant, and then we find out she's pregnant with twins. So then we find out we have to shut down for 5 weeks in the middle of production in the fall. So so we did, and during that time, I didn't think about having a film career. Like I said, I was just really happy to have family ties, and everything was fine with me. I had a shiny new car, apartment, and so it was all good. So this independent film company asked me to make a werewolf movie called Teen Wolf, and I thought, well, that's funny. I can do that in 4 weeks, and it was a nice amount of money, and it kind of made me think of Michael Landon. I kind of laughed. So I'm doing that. So I'm doing the movie now during this hiatus, and we're shooting in Pasadena, and now I'm out there, and I get this stuff on my face, and I'm sitting there going, what have I done? My career was just taking off nicely, and I'm in Pasadena wearing a werewolf mask, and there was a company coming scouting locations for a film, and so we asked them what it was for, and they said they were scouting locations for a film that Spielberg was producing called Back to the Future, and Crispin Glover was going to be in it, who I knew, who had done an episode of Family Ties, and I knew from some other things. And I remember thinking, oh, see, now that would be great. If I could do that, it'd be a lot better than being a werewolf. And unbeknownst to me, I didn't even know this, but Gary had already been approached by Steven and Bob Zemeckis to let me do the movie Back to the Future. But they wanted to go in October, and he couldn't let me out because it was at that time at the beginning of the show, and he hadn't known that the situation was going to happen with Meredith, so he didn't know there was going to be that window. So he had said, I can't let him do it, and he said, please don't tell Michael, not that I want him to think I did something behind his back, but I really had no other choice. I can't. And I totally accept that and understand that. So they cast the role, and they started shooting with another actor, with Eric Stoltz, who's a terrific actor, really good actor. But what was happening was that, Eric, there's a certain goofiness to it that I don't think Eric was really ready to embrace. Eric is talented enough to do anything that he wants to do, but I just think there was a silliness to the role that they'd kind of pictured me for, and so they decided to make a change around Christmas, and I had just come back from Christmas vacation, and Gary called me into his office, and I thought, he was doing Gina, a pilot with Gina Davis, a secondary series at NBC, and so I went down there. He'd called me to his office down there at NBC in Burbank, and I went down, called me into his office, and I think, I'm going to get fired. I mean, still at this point, I'm thinking, he's going to can me. What am I doing here? And he gave me the script for Back to the Future, and he said, Steven Spielberg is producing this film, Bob Zemeckis is directing it. They want you to do it, so why don't you take it and read it? And if you want to do it, then we'll figure out how to make it work. So, I took the script and kind of went like this, and I love it. It's great. When do I start? So, basically, within a week, I was doing both jobs, and I'd do Family Ties in the daytime, and I'd do Back to the Future at night. And I was working 18, 19, 20 hours, and by the time Back to the Future came out in the summer of '85, there were whole scenes I can remember shooting, because I was so tired during so much of it. And, weeks after weeks of 18, 19-hour days. But then all of a sudden, it was a huge hit, and I came back. We were in England that summer, the summer of '85, doing Family Ties Goes to London, which was just a debacle. And I come back from there, and I've got the #1 and #2 movies and the #2 television show in the country, and just whatever kind of fame and recognition I was enjoying quite well, thank you very much, with Family Ties, just all of a sudden was this whole new thing. It was just very, very strange and exciting, and so my whole life changed. My first nomination was in, the years I'm trying to think, it'd be '84, '85. I was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and didn't win. John Larroquette won, and the next year they moved me into Best Lead Actor category, or Leading Actor, whatever they call it. They don't say best, for good reason. But that next year that I was moved into the lead category was the Back to the Future had just come out, and things were really peaking, and I remember being in New York working on a movie called Secret of My Success, and I found out I was nominated, and I was talking to one of the producers of that film, a guy named David Chasman. And I said, what do I say? I don't know what to say. And he goes, well, make fun of yourself. And I said, well, he goes, say you feel 4 feet tall. And I said, okay, if I win, which I don't think I'm going to do, but if I win, the first thing I'm going to say is I feel 4 feet tall. And then as again, I'm thinking, what if I win? I told Chasman I'm actually going to say this. And then I won, you know, and I went up and I kind of whooped for a second, and then I thought, let's get it over with. I feel 4 feet tall, you know. It was an amazing moment. And the other thing about that year, and the year that I won for the first time, was the first year that Tracy Pollan was on the show playing Ellen, playing Alex's girlfriend. And she had a New York stage background, and she brought such an integrity to that character. And so I'd kind of been, you know, this bouncy, like, funny guy for a couple of years at that point. And for her to introduce this kind of level of reality into the show and into the character by what she was doing, you know, and that mixed with the comedy, it was this really great combination. So I felt really good that year by getting that nomination and about winning that award, because I really felt, in a way, it was a credit to the work that she did too. And then a year later, I ran into her auditioning for another film, and within a year, we were married. Pepsi came to me with this concept for this commercial. It was first just one commercial. And it was at a real time when you could almost do anything. And I had just come from I had just done Back to the Future, and people had said for years, you can't do television and then do films. And then I did that. People said, you can't do films and do commercials. And again, I was always kind of, I love to be told what I couldn't do, you know? So I was like, oh, I can do that. Sure, I can do that. I can do television commercials. All I have to do is do them in a way that they are like little films, or that they're kind of something in and of themselves. And the creative people at Pepsi were amazing. This guy, Alan Potash, who invented the phrase the Pepsi generation. And Joe Pytka, the director, and also Rick Levine, two directors that just about every great commercial you can remember they directed. And so we started to make this series of commercials. And it was a lot of fun. I almost think of them as like little movies, you know. Whether it was the one, the most famous one was the one where I come into this apartment or this girl comes over and wants to borrow Pepsi, and I have to go out the window. And I was really amazed at the art that these guys brought to it. So at the end of the day, yeah, it was commercialism, and it was maybe a little crass, and you know, the paychecks were nice, but I do think that they were good. They were good little pieces of film, and in fact, they won, you know, they won awards at Cannes, and they won, you know, Clios and stuff. So they were recognized as being pretty good. In 1995, I was down in New Zealand, and I was doing a movie. It was the last film on my Universal contract, which I wanted to kind of get done at that point, because now I've had this revelation of just doing work that I enjoy, but I still had this starring role in this big film to do. But luckily for me, it was directed by a guy named Peter Jackson, who's a pretty good filmmaker. I think he's got Lord of the Rings coming out this summer, and it was this big kind of Ghostbustery kind of movie that we shot down in New Zealand. And it was a good experience, but while I was down there, you know, I had two infant daughters, twin daughters that were born that were in New York, and Tracy was in New York. My son was in New York. And I'm down there thinking, why am I doing this again? Why am I, you know, what am I thinking about? And at the same time too, as I was tiring of New Zealand television, which is fine, but you know, you can only see so many documentaries on the Kiwi. People were sending me videotapes of American television shows, and a lot of shows I hadn't seen. They were sending me Friends. They were sending me Seinfeld episodes. They were sending me News Radio had just come on, so they'd sent me copies of that. And I was watching it, thinking, wow, TV is great, you know? And I'd read all these comedy scripts for film over the last little while that weren't that good, and I said, oh, and I always wondered where all the good comedy writers were, and then I realized they're all writing for TV, that this stuff is amazing. And as I put that in the context of my life, I thought, well, why am I not doing this? This is what I do. This is what people have always enjoyed me doing. Again, putting it in the context of my illness, I thought, I don't know how much time I really have to work in front of the camera anymore. So I could do a 6 year run maybe of a show, really enjoy myself, have a lot of creative control over it, and quite frankly, involve myself in profits a little bit more than I've ever been able to before. And most, first and foremost, make some great TV. And so from New Zealand, I was sending these kind of missives back to the States that if anyone, any producers, and I had a certain kind of list of people that I wanted to talk to who were interested in talking about it, I'd like to. And a few people came down to New Zealand to see me, and I came back on a couple of breaks and met with some people. So that going into the next spring, I was pretty committed to doing something. And then out of the blue, I got a call from Gary Goldberg saying, "What about me?" And it was a good question because Gary and I are so close, and it's such a in ways he's avuncular, in other ways it's paternal, in other ways it's fraternal. We're so close, and it's such a unique bond and so special in what we were able to do together that I was really worried about. I thought obviously of working with him, but I thought to ruin that would really be a tragedy. And but he said, he thought we could get past that and be careful of that. And then he sent me a script. We talked about Spin City, and we talked about that idea of that kind of character, a young political operative. And I talked to him about how I thought comedy had changed and television comedy had changed, and there was a faster pace now. I kind of had this thing in mind of like this kind of ER of sitcom, just like 8, whereas with Family Ties we do 6 scenes. I cold open 6 scenes in a tag. I wanted to do like 18 scenes, 19 scenes, 20 scenes. I wanted to do it. Film in front of an audience, but at the same time too, I wanted to be able to have a set that was really deep that we could dive into with steady cams and really mess with prosceniums and have people think that it was not continuous action when it really was, kind of do long kind of tracking shots that dumped out into a proscenium in front of an audience. And he was with me, he was keeping up for an old guy. And then he and Bill Lawrence sent me the script for Spin City, and it was just by far and away the best thing that I'd read. And it was coming off my fax machine in my old apartment on the west side. And I'd read a page, laugh, and hand it to my wife, and Tracy'd read it and laugh. And, by the time we got through handing pages back and forth to each other, she looked at me and said, "You got to do this." And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." And, we got this great deal from ABC eventually. And that was it. We were on the air. And, another thing that always surprises me is that, well, we didn't really do a pilot for Spin City. We got an order for 26 right away, but I've only, I did a pilot for Family Ties, and I'd set out to do Spin City, and those are the only 2 comedies that I've ever done. And when you think about the infant mortality rate for pilots and how difficult it is to get a show on the air, I feel tremendously blessed, and that's due in no small part to my relationship with Gary. I've been working harder than I've ever worked in my life, which is the irony of the whole thing. I operate with a confidence that sometimes sets people aback because, they kind of expect me to be a little more concerned, but I know in 10 years this disease will be gone. And I'm looking forward to doing things after that. But it's a nice project, I really feel like it's an accomplishable goal. I've loved the things I've learned, and more than anything else, I've loved the people that I've been exposed to, and the things I've learned from their courage and their intellect and their dedication. And it's been a process and a experience I wouldn't have traded for anything in the world. I tell people that in a way, it's been a gift for me, and I have to qualify it by saying, it's a gift that keeps on taking, but it's certainly been a gift. So that's been the largest part of what I've been doing. To that end, I've also been writing a book, of which the profits will go towards the foundation. So it's given me incentive to do something that I really would rather not do, which is kind of look at my life and my feelings and try to put it into book form. But that's been an amazing experience. I've been working very hard at that. Well, I think my proudest career achievement is twofold. I mean, on the surface, I feel really blessed that I was able to both be in a television show that had the social impact of Family Ties and a film that had the social impact of Back to the Future. To have lightning strike twice in my career in my mid-20s really gave me a lot of the freedom that I felt later on. It was almost like that dream of my grandmother's. You know, it just gave me room to do whatever I wanted to do. It took a lot of pressure off for the rest of the way, so I was very proud of that. But also very proud that I've worked with people like Gary Goldberg, Bob Zemeckis, Steven Spielberg, Brandon Tartikoff. You know, I was saying to you that to have been a part of that era of television when Grant Tinker and Brandon Tartikoff did what they did with NBC and created shows like Hill Street Blues and Cosby and Cheers and shows that, and Family Ties, and shows that everything that we watch now and say is good, you can trace back to the quality of that programming. It's something I'll always be proud of. And so that's, I think career-wise, that's it. And the people that I've worked with and the things that I've learned from them. And so on a personal level, what am I most proud of? I'm proud that I showed up. I'm proud that I stuck it out. And I'm proud that I recognize how lucky I was.